Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says AG declines plea against Swara. Before we understand what this article is, we have to understand the background. There are three ways of initiating a criminal contempt. One is by the suo motu action of the Supreme Court. The second is on the motion by the Attorney General or the Solicitor General with reference to the Supreme Court. And the third is on the basis of a petition filed by any other person with the consent in writing of the Attorney General or the Solicitor General. There was a recent case of Prashant Bhushan. According to this particular case, there was one of the person who had filed a complaint with respect to the tweet made by Prashant Bhushan. That happens to be Mahek Maheshwari. So who was representing Prashant Bhushan? It was advocate Dushyant Dev. He was representing Prashant Bhushan and he made an argument. He said when there is any other person who is giving a complaint, then this will require the writing of the Attorney General and the Solicitor General. That was precisely the argument made by Dushyant Dev. But what did the Supreme Court said? Yes, he had made that particular complaint, but that complaint was converted into a suo motu cognizance by the Supreme Court of India. So the Supreme Court of India said, while we have taken a suo motu cognizance, that is a time where the Attorney General's permission or a written writing is not required, as the Supreme Court has initiated a suo motu cognizance of that particular case. So what is the argument all about? So whenever there is a criminal contempt initiated, the Supreme Court can initiate a contempt on its own, or if it is made by some other person, this will require the consent or the writing by the Attorney General or by the Solicitor General. How did the Supreme Court base its argument? That is with reference to the constitutional power given to the Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court of India has made some valid arguments. It has said that we have taken the suo motu cognizance not only from the Contempt of Act of 1971, but because of the constitutional power that which is given to the Supreme Court, and that is through Article 129. So what does Contempt Act of 1971 provide? It provides the procedures, it provides how the process will have to be initiated, but the ultimate power is given by the Constitution of India under Article 129 of the Indian Constitution. So the Supreme Court went on to say, Advocate Dushyant Dev, that we have initiated a suo motu cognizance, so we would not require the permission from the Attorney General or the Solicitor General. It also lays claim to one of the other landmark judgments given in Vijay Kurle, the others. What was this judgment all about? It said that Supreme Court would be able to, on a suo motu cognizance, come up with a criminal contempt case and the consent of the Attorney General is not required. So because there has been a previous precedent, this will not require the consent of the Attorney General. Why? Because the Supreme Court has already laid a precedent in Vijay Kurle other. But what has the Supreme Court said? The Supreme Court has made another valid claim that in this particular case, what we also have to provide is that there is a fair hearing. There is importance that is given to natural justice. Was it given here? Yes. Why? Because Prashant Bhushan was asked to argue his case and he was represented by an advocate. When this particular procedure of natural justice, when this particular procedure of just and fair trial was given to Prashant Bhushan, the ultimate analysis given by Supreme Court is this is a fair trial, and then this is why suo motu cognizance can be taken up. So what has the Supreme Court said? The Supreme Court has clearly said, in case this is initiated suo motu by the Supreme Court of India, this ultimately means that it is already taken cognizance of it, and that will mean the matter is purely between the court as well as the contemnor. So anyone else will not interfere, as we have taken the suo motu cognizance. When this is done, when the judgment is passed, and in the recent case of Prashant Bhushan, what we actually see, he was convicted in this particular case. So what would be the punishment? So the punishment in this particular case will be a jail term of about 6 months, or with a fine. This may extend to about 2000 rupees, or with both. However, we also have to understand section 12 of this particular Contempt Act of 1971. also clearly says that in case there is the accused, he can be discharged of the punishment if he gives an unconditional apology. This is what we have to understand. But in the present scenario, what is required is the third type. What is the third type? In the earlier case, what we saw was the suo motu cognizance of the Supreme Court of India. In this particular case, with reference to Swara Bhaskar, there was a case that was filed by a resident of Karnataka. So this was a third person. So whenever there is a third person filing a criminal contempt against another person, that means this will require the writing of the Attorney General or the Solicitor General. In the present scenario, there was one of the case filed against Swara Bhaskar. Why? Because the particular person who filed this criminal contempt felt that she had violated and scandalized the court with respect to the Ram Janmabhoomi issue. The Attorney General looks into this particular case and has refused consent to this very plea. So he says that whatever statement made by Swara Bhaskar appears to be a factual one, and it is her perception, and at the same time she has not attacked the institution of judiciary. Since she has not scandalized the court, since she has not attacked the judiciary, this will not require criminal proceedings, says the Attorney General. So we are looking at the third perspective. So because we are looking at the third perspective, what we have to focus right now is that since the Attorney General is not given the consent to the criminal proceedings, it may not be taken up by the Supreme Court of India. We have to wait and watch what the Solicitor General has to say about this, but this is the present context with respect to this article. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article speaks about India's food insecurity. There is one of the reports called as the State of Food Insecurity and Nutrition in the World report. This is an annual flagship report jointly prepared by Food and Agricultural Organization of the United States, International Fund for Agricultural Development, United Nations Children's Fund, World Food Program, World Health Organization. What does this report have? This report basically gives you an idea about the number of people who are suffering from hunger. It also gives an idea about food insecurity in that region and the country, and what are the steps that needs to be taken up, the nutritional issues, challenges when it comes to addressing hunger in that particular country. So on the basis of all these ideas given by this particular report, the policy makers of the country, the international organizations, academic institutions, the general public, the NGOs would be able to take steps so that hunger in that region and in that country can be comparatively reduced, and what we would be able to do is accomplish the very idea of hunger reduction in the sustainable developmental goals. The state of the food security and nutrition in the world report has two measures of checking food insecurity. One is the prevalence of undernourishment, the other is prevalence of moderate and severe food insecurity. How does this report basically understand the food insecurity in the region? The first process is prevalence of undernourishment. What is this prevalence of undernourishment? Basically, what this report does, it tries to identify the survey details of that particular country as per its own data. Let's say with respect to India, we have the National Sample Survey Office. This National Sample Survey Office releases the nutritional intake and also the consumer expenditure data. So every country likewise will have its own data, will have its own setup, will have its own tools and techniques to identify nutritional deficiency in that particular country. So what this POU does, it identifies, collects the data from the regionally produced data across the length and breadth of the world. So what has been the official statistics with respect to the country will be taken up for understanding the prevalence of undernourishment according to the prevalence of undernourishment as per the state of food security and nutrition in the world. So what happens here? The official data of that particular country is taken up to understand the number of people who are nutritionally deficient. Then we have the prevalence of moderate and severe food insecurity. What happens under this particular process is there is running of the annual survey by independent organizations. This is not by the government, this is not by the official agencies, but this is by other organizations which is conducted on an annual basis. What exactly happens? There is a scale that is used to check whether there is inefficiency when it comes to the nutritional status, and that is what is called as food insecurity experience scale. So what is this food insecurity experience scale? According to this particular scale, let's say there is one of the organizations, or there can be number of organizations. What do? They go up to the people of India, or for that matter a specific region in that particular country, and ask questions to those people. So the questionnaire will be in the form of yes or no. So the questions are all tabulated, and then this is checked whether the people have enough food, what is the quality of food, and what is the quantity of food that which is given to the people in that particular country. So on the prevalence of undernourishment, what we have is the government data, and when it comes to the prevalence of moderate and severe food insecurity, it is independent organizations which go to the people in person, interview them, ask them questions, and tabulate all these answers, and ultimately give an analysis whether to understand they have the food, whether the quality is good, or whether the quantity given to those people is sufficient enough or not. So if it is only about obtaining food which is nutritional food or not, it will be under the mild food insecurity. But if it is about quality, if it is about quantity, all this increases in a scale, then that means that particular person and people in that country are experiencing severe food insecurity. So if it is only one parameter, it will be mild, but if there are number of parameters which are included, it means there is food insecurity in that region, and people would be experiencing hunger, and people would not be able to get sufficient food, and ultimately what we will see is nutritional deficiency in that particular country. And according to the statistics given by this particular report, India has the largest population of food insecure people. But kindly remember, India as a country does not accept this particular report of prevalence of moderate and severe food insecurity under the state of the food security and nutrition in the world. Why does India not recognize this? That is because they feel that this particular result can be fabricated. The sample size that they have taken can be comparatively less as well. So nutritional deficiency as given by this particular report can be fabricated, or the sampling that is taken, the number of questions that are asked, the number of people who are asked can be comparatively less as well. That is why India does not get into the authenticity of this particular report. And at the same time, we also have to understand how were these organizations able to come to a conclusion that India has the largest population of food insecure people. What these organizations did is that they were able to come to a conclusion and also come up with certain facts, is because they were able to look at it holistically on the South Asia basis. So they were able to get statistics with respect to nutrition for the entire South Asian countries, and they also excluded India from the South Asian statistics. So what did they do? They subtracted India from the South Asian statistics, and ultimately when all other countries were excluded, what we get is statistics only for India. So according to this statistics, 27.8% of the Indian population suffered from moderate or severe food insecurity in 2014 and 16. The proportion rose to 31.6% in 2017 and 19. The number of food insecure people grew from 42.65 crore in 2014 and 16, and at the same time it grew to 48.86 crore in the 2017 and 19. So what we see is the number of people who are suffering from food insecurity, not able to get enough amount of food, not able to get quality of food, and the quantity of food has comparatively increased over a period of time. So this raises couple of questions and concerns with respect to the nutritional status in India. As we initially discussed, we have the concept of what is called as prevalence of undernourishment. As per POU, it checks about deficiency of calories by the national surveys. In India, it is the National Sample Survey Office which measures the nutritional intake and also the consumer expenditure survey. What is this consumer expenditure survey? As the very name denotes, it is consumer spending on something, and a survey for the same is conducted by the National Sample Survey Organization. What does it do? It takes into consideration on what people are spending. It can be in urban areas, it can be in rural areas, it can be on the goods or it can be on the services, it can be on food items or it can be on non-food items. So all these consumer spending will be taken and it will be tabulated. Ideally, this should have been published in the year 2017 and in the year 2018, but this was not published by the government of India. So what is the major problem? We measuring about poverty, we measuring about food consumption is not available for the recent years is the first major concern. Since there is no data on the consumer expenditure, what we have to focus is on the supply side. Now when it comes to the supply side, what we actually witness right now is there is increase of supply in India, but the ideal question to be asked is whether this increase of supply is going to the poor section. Whenever there is increase of supply, it can go to the richer class, it can go to the middle class as well, but ideal question to be asked is whether this increase is going to the poor section. When we look at statistics, energy supply in India has increased by 3.8% between 2011 and 2015 and 17, but consumption expenditure covering food and other expenses fell by about 3.7%. So you might have an increase in the supply, but the consumption that is happening from the people has comparatively dropped. What this means is that this could give rise to agricultural crisis, this can give rise to investment problem, and ultimately this will shrink the employment opportunities in the general market. Looking at all these statistics, we can come to a conclusion that this particular survey that was supposed to be released in 2017 and 18 was not released. So we do not have enough statistics, but whatever statistics that has been collected right now can be right or it may not be right as well. But if it is right, this means that India has a grave food insecurity. If India has a grave food insecurity and amidst the COVID-19 crisis, this might have been exasperated as well. So going forward, India will have to make sure that an organic survey is conducted to understand who are the people who are getting food, who are the people who are not getting nutritional food, and then nutritional food will have to be provided to all those people who currently are nutritional deficient. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says women uninterrupted. COVID-19 has hit many services. One of the most unexpected was lack of contraceptives and abortion services to the women during the lockdown, leading to unwanted pregnancies, increase in domestic violence and maternal mortality. Let's look at some of the statistics to understand what this is all about. A recent estimate by Mary Stopes International said about 2 million women missed out on services between January and June. 1.3 million were in India. Who are these women? These women did not have services with respect to abortion and they were not able to get contraceptives on time. According to the World Health Organization, a recent survey of responses from 103 countries found that 67% reported disruption in family planning and contraception services. Now the question is, during the period of lockdown or amidst the COVID-19 crisis, why were the women not able to go through the process of abortion or they were not able to find the contraceptives? That is because of lack of awareness. Abortion in India during the lockdown and amidst the COVID-19 crisis has been clearly put under the essential service list. The government has done its part, but the problem is people, especially women, were not aware that this particular abortion process was under the essential services. Even if they knew, they wanted to go to the hospital, get things checked. The problem was diversion of the transport services. What was happening? COVID-19 is an emergency. It happened all of a sudden. So what this required is huge amount of doctors as well as other personnel working for the COVID-19 patients. One such area was with respect to the transport services as well. In case women wanted to go to the hospitals, they were not provided transport on time. That is another reason. The third reason is because of shutting of the clinics. We have women who wanted to go to the clinics in the nearby areas, but all those clinics apart from the COVID-19 centers and few hospitals were shut during the lockdown period. Why? Because they were also scared that they would catch the COVID-19. They did not open the clinics, and as a result women were not able to go to these clinics nearby to their homes, and as a result there is unwanted pregnancy and the abortion process becomes a futile exercise. Then what we have is the contraceptives and also abortion drugs and pills as well. Because there were shortages with respect to the contraceptions, there has been an increase of pregnancy as well. Why? That is because when you look at all these companies and manufacturing entities who are into manufacturing of these contraceptives as well as these pills, they were not working full time. They did not have people who could be employed in the production, and at the same time we do not also have the logistics to supply all these contraceptive pills and drugs as well. One is because the manufacturing entity is not working, and two, even if it is working, the logistics sector was not working full time, and as a result the contraceptive pills which were supposed to reach the women did not reach, and that is the primary reason all these issues have caused unwanted pregnancies. Contraceptive pills were not available, and at the same time women were not able to get themselves aborted with unwanted pregnancy. What is the way forward? What are the steps that we have to take in order to make sure that we are protecting the women? Providing uninterrupted abortion and contraceptive counseling, devices and care services are to be provided to the women to safeguard the reproductive rights of the women and also to protect them from the abuse of their partners. So the first important factor is providing uninterrupted abortion and contraceptive counseling. We also have to incentivize the local clinics as well. As we initially discussed, these clinics are shutting their operations because they are scared where they would catch the COVID-19. So providing them incentives and providing all the protective kits to these people so that they can start off with their clinics becomes the second important factor. When it comes to the domestic violence, what we had was the helpline intervention model as devised by the National Commission for Women with respect to the domestic violence cases. If they were able to do it with respect to the domestic violence, why not do the same with respect to the contraceptives as well as the abortion is another alternative factor as well. So providing the nationwide helpline services to ensure abortion access must be extended. The fourth is with respect to the publicization. Why? Because the first major concern that we looked at was with respect to the awareness. People were not aware that this is an essential service guaranteed by the government of India as well as government of states as well. So what the government will have to do is to provide all sorts of information in the national newspapers, in the social media as well as in the national print media and the visual media as well. So publicizing, giving an awareness to the people of India that this is an essential service will help in minimizing unwanted pregnancies as well as abortion enhancement as well. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about Srisailam fire. We did discuss about the issue day before yesterday as well, but this article here focuses on safety measures. There are three safety measures that was supposed to be ideally followed in any of the electric plant setups. What are these? One, it includes IEEE standards for substation fire protection. So what is this IEEE standards? This basically includes fixed and portable ventilation system that can remove heavy smoke. We have about 9 people who passed away. Why? Because the minute there was an electric circuit, it became a thick fog of smoke. People could not understand where to move. People could not understand should they move in the right direction. Why? Because they were engulfed with the smoke as well. So ideally this required what is called as the ventilation protection or portable ventilation systems. If this was provided, if this was present, this this catastrophe would have not striked that particular region is the first major concern. The other issue is that under the IEEE standards, we have what is called as the water mist fire protection system. So what does it do? It basically sprays the water. These very small droplets of water control or extinguish the fire that is prevalent in that electric region. So what happens? It cools down the flame, and at the same time it prevents the fire by pre-wetting. Such places usually have what is called as the fire retardant materials. What are these fire retardant materials? Basically, they help in slow burning, and they also limit the spread of the fire when it has caught fire. So basically, it will reduce the risk that is associated with fire. This can include some of the materials like mineral wool as well as gypsum boards. Other systems for safety also include the alarms or the sirens, as we discussed the other day. This will also require dual exits as well and escape routes via the staircases. Now the concern with respect to the Srisailam plant is, if there was presence of all these standards, why did the personnel not use it? This has to be investigated by the CID of the state government of Telangana and ultimately give us an analysis, is what this article says. So what is the way forward? The dam fire is primarily the responsibility of the state governments. It is the state government which has to prevent fires in all these power plants, and at the same time the center government will also have to take the opportunity to review certain safety standards in places like Jharkhand. Why? Because Jharkhand as a state has extensive underground coalfield fires. This can impact large number of people as well as the community. So the central government and the state government will have to make sure that all the safety codes that which is prevalent in India right now are strictly complied by. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about Nepal policy. There is no new update with respect to India and Nepal. This is about the border issue we have discussed couple of times as well. In case you want to look into it, you can go back to May 29 CNA and kindly look into our India-Nepal issue. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Consider the following statements with respect to National Council for Transgender Persons. Its chairman will be Union Minister for the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, while the vice chairperson will be the secretary to the Ministry of Social Justice. The council will have representatives from community members, 5 states and 10 central departments. Which of the following statements are incorrect? It is asking for the incorrect statement, so the answer to this is one only. Why? Because the vice chairperson is not the secretary to the Ministry of Social Justice. Instead, it is the junior minister in the ministry who happens to be the vice chairperson. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, this council will have representatives from the community members, that is the transgender community. This will have about 5 state representatives. Who are the state representatives? This will be from the zones of North, South, East, West as well as Northeast as well. So on the basis of rotation, one from each region will be part of this council. The council will also have officials from 10 central departments as well. Some of them include Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Home Affairs, Housing and Urban Affairs, Minority Affairs, Human Resource Development, Rural Development, Labor, Employment, so on and so forth. So what is the function of this particular council? Basically, they will advise the central government what should be the policies, what should be the programs, legislations and schemes with respect to the transgender persons. They will also evaluate if this particular legislation as devised by the council is working fine or not. They will review and coordinate all the activities of all these departments, readdress the grievances of the transgender community and ultimately perform such other functions as described by the central government under the 2019 Act. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are correctly matched? One, we have the scheme. The other is administration by a body. The Employees Pension Scheme is administered by the Employees Provident Fund Organization, Varishta Pension Bima Yojana by Life Insurance Corporation, Atal Pension Yojana by Pension Fund Regulatory and Developmental Authority. Which of them are correctly matched? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements is or correct with respect to Krishna River? The Krishna River is the peninsular river which rises near Nasik district of Maharashtra. Krishna River flows across 3 states of India. The answer to this is, since it is asking for the correct statement, the answer is none. Why? Because the Krishna is the peninsular river which rises not near the Nasik, but instead it rises near Mahabaleshwar near Sahyadri. But kindly remember, Nasik district of Maharashtra gives rise to Godavari. And when you look into the map, it does not flow through 3 states of India, but instead it is Maharashtra, Karnataka, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh. So this is about 4 states. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. The multi-dimensional poverty index developed by Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative with UNDP support covers which of the following? Deprivation of education, health, assets and services at household level, purchasing power parity at national level. This is wrong. Extent of budget deficit and GDP growth rate at national level. The answer to this is one only. Now let's look into the mains practice question. India has to conduct a national survey on food insecurity to assess the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on food security of different sections of the population. Discuss. Uninterrupted access to contraception and abortion services is imperative to protect women and avert unwanted pregnancies. What measures should be taken by government to prevent unsafe abortions amidst the COVID-19 crisis? So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review, come up with constructive criticism. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.